All right, everybody, we are here doing some mock-up pairings and kind of walking through the planning and setup that I usually do for our team leading into to events. And we're here with the team captain, Namian, with Interspecies Reviewers. They're playing in the 8-man, so we're going to be doing some pairings for 8-mans. How you doing this morning, sir?
Not too bad. I'm ready to get on my way to Tennessee. I'll tell you that.
Yes, ATC coming up. You guys are in the hot midst of planning. Unfortunately, I'm not going this year, so I get to watch everybody from the sidelines. Namian has no insight on any of this that we go through, so we'll kind of get his live reactions on what he thinks about this kind of process. So let's just dive into it. We're going to try to keep this as short and snappy as we can. So this is their first round pairings, who they're playing against. So on their roster over here, they've got Tau, Guard, Necrons, World Eaters, Grey Knights, Blood Angels, CSM, and Death Guard. And they're playing against Grey Knights, Tau, Knights, Death Guard, CSM, Astra Militarum, Demons, and Space Marines. Couple things to note about the people they're playing against, because they have a couple of their Marines is Gladius, so that's important to know. And it's like super anti-tank Gladius. It's got Eradicators, it's got Aggressor Bomb, it's got 2 Vindicators. So you kind of have to know what kind of Marines you're pairing against. It's very good to know. Demons is like big demon match. And then on Namian's side, a couple of things to point out is they've got Guard with a lot of tanks. They have a CSM list with 2 Land Raiders. And then both of them basically have like Rhino Rush Death Guard. So it's pretty funny. Like you guys have like 40 Plague Marines with Rhinos and they have 50. So it's actually pretty funny. So what I generally do is this to start it off. So the most important step to first starting is, what are you going to defend with, and what do you do with what they defend with? So what I like to do is write down all of their defenders and then who my ideal attackers are into that defender. And then I see what's left, and that leads me to who I should defend with. When you defend, you don't necessarily want to always defend with who is the best matches across the board. Like, hey, this person has no reds, they should defend because they could take everything. That's not necessarily the best. The first defender's job is generally take a really bad match and score as many points as you can. So throwing somebody kind of under the bus, but trying to make it to where they can score 6 to 8 points is ideal. But you also don't want to take off your bigger, better matches and your better attackers off in that spot, because then you can make it easier on your opponent. So when we kind of look at this, and maybe you like disagree with some of these, that's totally fine. This is just me. I don't have Namian's matrix or anything, so this is just really going off of factions and everything, not really their players, their player experience, anything like that. So their demons list, I put down Necrons and World Eaters is what we would attack into. Their Gladius, I put Guard and World Eaters. Guard isn't necessarily like the most ideal thing because they do have so much anti-tank, but Marines generally just don't punch up into Guard very well. Then Tau, Necrons, and World Eaters. Grey Knights, Necrons, and Tau. Guard, Grey Knights, and World Eaters. Death Guard, Grey Knights, and Necrons. CSM, Blood Angels, and Death Guard. Knights, Blood Angels, and World Eaters. Now, this doesn't get us through all of the pairings. This is just for the first drop of what we care about. So then we can look at this and we can be like, okay, this is the best thing based on what's going to get us the best match for our first attack into them. And then after that, we would generally look through all of our matrices and we would be like, okay, what's going to get us more reds? What's going to get us more greens? So we're not working off any type of matrices here. I don't want to like spoil any of their super secrets. So we'll just kind of walk through pairings. Obviously, if he wants to use his matrix to pair as I put cards down against him, he is more than welcome to do that. So does this kind of process make sense for you, Naaman? Do you have any questions about this process?
Yeah. I went to 8TC before, so this will actually be my second time having a little bit of experience with it. But generally, having done ATC for the past few years and then also done 8TC, a lot of the same concepts are generally about the same, except for I think that the 8-man does it a little bit better throughout the process, just for the sheer fact of you can't take the 5 most overloaded armies and bring those to a team event and then just stomp everybody regardless of pairing matrices, right? Like you're always going to have those extra 3 armies that maybe aren't doing so much better in the general meta as far as like a singles event is concerned, but in team metas they very much shine, like a Death Guard.
Yeah, yeah, it's very true. I love eights for that, and I think that the meta right now is probably the healthiest it's ever been. Like when you look at all the tier list videos people put out and everything, everything's just like sitting in that A and B tier, and there's maybe 1 or 2 factions
AdMech.
that are lower. Yeah, you can say AdMech. I think we don't have to get into all that, but yes, there's factions that are generally higher and lower, and we've seen it be so spread out, and now it's kind of pulled together to very tight. And you're like, hey, we have an 8-man roster, and you're like, man, dude, there's like 12 things I want to put on this roster, and you have
Yeah.
to now you have to make some difficult decisions, and hopefully you can pair against it. So yeah, let's walk through a mock-up pairing and see kind of what outcome you get and how you feel about it, and then we can see if there's anything that we
Yep.
can do to alter it for the next one. So I think that you all should be defending Death Guard or CSM. I think those are the 2 best ones. So when you look at the tables, you really the 2 Land Raiders is a little hard. There's really only 3 good tables for them. So you kind of have to get them off the table in the first 2 goes. Death Guard is just a good one to throw out there and let them eat something. Especially in this match, like they don't really have too much that Death Guard is trying to hunt for. Like they could maybe go into their CSM list. But there's really nothing else. Like there's no orcs over here. There's not tons of anti-infantry stuff. So Death Guard is one in this match where it's like, hey, they kind of just have to go eat something and then score as many points as they can and play the slow game. And then I would predict that their team would be defending with their knights. I know a lot of people their knights or their Tau. Most of the time, people are going to throw Tau out there to first defend. I don't think you necessarily have to do that. What they expect out of that is to take something off the table and then just score like a decent amount of points. But however, their Tau is not Manka. It is like a very off kilter retaliation cadre. So it's not really a good defender list. So I wouldn't expect them to do that. I would expect them to probably go with their guard or their knights. I love throwing knights out there first. Knights generally doesn't really have too much it wants to attack into, and I think that they can blunt some scores more than less. So I'm going to say that they're going to throw their knights out there because knights want table pick, and yeah, I just don't think knights should be on a team list. So that's where I sit with that. So what would you put out for your for your first defender?
So for ours, almost assuredly would be the Death Guard, and just for the sheer fact of if you look at all of their different lists, if you have knights, they're already suffering with the -1 toughness, which gets a lot of their heavy plague weapons wounding them on 5s. It just gets them to that spot they want to be, and then they also have the -1 armor, which with a lot of their weapons, AP0, AP1, it easily gets them rocking to that invuln point. And the same pretty much carries across all the different armies that they have, with the exception of Chaos Space Marines. I think that ends up being a little bit of a question mark. So that's why I'm not so sure about throwing them out first. But Death Guard definitely would be my first pick.
Okay. So you defend with Death Guard. They put out knights. Who do you want to? Or I'll put what I would do. So into Death Guard, Grey Knights is usually a pretty big stomp into Death Guard. So I'm gonna pinch you into this, and you can either choose to take Grey Knights off the table and see how many points you can score, and maybe take a big loss. Um, their Grey Knights list is not full like stat checky, so like they have a little bit upswing because of the Terminators and stuff like that. So it's probably a little bit better for the Death Guard, but generally you'll see Grey Knights come out there, and then I think that I would put out Demons. I think Death Guard struggles to take down the larger targets more than not. All their anti-infantry stuff kind of goes to waste. So I think that's what I would put out. What would you attack into Knights?
For our knights, if you could go ahead and put that on there. I would definitely pick Chaos Space Marines with the
Land Raiders.
Land Raiders, and then you have the Chosen Bombs that come down. They would very much like to punch up into Knights, and the lovely thing about Knights is when you bring them to a table, if you lose one big Knight with Imperial Knights, that's usually a big death knell. So if you can get a turn 1, turn 2 kill on a large Knight, pretty much their entire battle plan falls apart.
Sure.
The second one is I would put in Necrons.
Okay.
Because Knights have a hard time dealing with Catan. They have a very hard time dealing with Catan.
So let me give you my thoughts on this really quick. So I think your logic is correct there. The only reason that I wouldn't do that is because I think that CSM is a great second defender for you, and I think that Necrons attacks better into everything else. Knights generally can be beat by a lot of armies, and I think your World Eaters and Blood Angels. Like we'll keep going. This I just want to give you my like why I put World Eaters and Blood Angels. So I put World Eaters and Blood Angels because they're so fast and they can generally hide on most of these tables, even if Knights pick an open table, and they just auto delete Knights as well, and they can auto delete all the Knights in a single turn because they can stage, and then it's like, oh cool, your Knights shot me, I lost a squad. Maybe I lose 2 squads. Well, I still have 3 or 4 left. And how many Knights do you have? 3 big ones, 2 big ones. They're all dead. So that's kind of how I look at that. Is like I look at potentially the World Eaters and the Space Marines may not have the greatest matches into some other things. So trying to get them a easy win into the Knights is a really good punch up. Whereas this is a really good defender, and then Necrons attacks really well into like all of their lists. So just food for
and
food,
another
food
thing
thought.
to keep in mind too is the mission that we're playing is mission B. So
Which is
Knights, I
purge the
don't
foe.
believe,
Yeah.
purge the foe. So Knights really don't do that well into purge the foe. So with Necrons and CSM both having the ability to trade up that well into Knights, it really kind of deletes their ability to do the kill one, kill more, hold one, hold more,
Sure.
because the pressure's on them early. And like you said, it is table dependent, but that's kind of part of my thinking is not only is it how well do you do into that individual pairing as far as the faction is concerned, as far as the list is concerned, but what are you looking for when it comes to the mission itself? How can they play into that mission? And when as far as Purge the Foe is concerned, especially Knights versus Necrons, if they went to go that route, they're going to have hard time deleting entire units, and that's going to really hurt them losing that 4 VP per turn.
So if I was Knights, I would take your Necrons off the table here. So because I think
That would probably be the best.
I think your Necrons pair up into the other stuff, and I want to remove them from play. So with your Death Guard, what would you take? The Grey Knights or the Demons?
I would definitely take the Grey Knights because Grey Knights are going to punch up very well into some of our other lists, especially ones that don't have as many Plague Marines as the Death Guard do, so they can kind of counter Grey Knights' mobility with their ability to just kind of flood the board. So I would definitely go with that.
Cool. All right, so then we go on to the second pairings here. So I think I'm going to. Their Astro Militarum has a lot of tanks. They cannot afford to not get a lighter pick table. So they kind of have to go out here. So Knights is most likely picking a lighter table. The Death Guard and Grey Knights, they could either pick a light or a medium table. Grey Knights generally has a little bit more struggle if it's a little bit lighter table. Your Death Guard list doesn't have a lot of shooting. They're more infantry based. So I would assume you guys would not be picking a light table there.
No. No, it'd probably be a medium table because we also have the 3 carnivores in that squad too.
Sure.
And that puts on some extra pressure.
Yep. Cool. Who do you want for your second defenders?
All right, on our second defender, we're probably going to throw out the World Eaters.
Cool. Seems good. All right. Into your World Eaters, I would be putting my Death Guard. That is basically an unwinnable game for World Eaters. And let's see here. I think that this Space Marines list in particular does very well into that World Eaters. And then who would you attack into their guard?
I would go with the. I would probably go with the Tau with my list because I have quite a bit of anti-tank. I trade very well into the tank commanders, and then with my ability to observe and guide and spot a unit to give myself the +1 ballistic skill. If I get tied into combat with some of those tank commanders, I don't really particularly care because that's where I want to be anyway to ensure that they don't get the fire back whenever it's all said and done for that extra trading ability that guard has. And
Cool.
then with the second one, I would go with the Chaos Space Marine.
Alrighty.
I don't necessarily think Chaos Space Marines would necessarily win that match, but I think that they would most certainly with Abaddon, with the Chosen, with the 2 Land Raiders, keep that match close enough to where we basically just take Astra Militarum off the table.
Sure.
I would expect a draw in that scenario.
All right, makes sense to me. Makes sense to me. So I'm going to, if I was making a decision, I would assume both of these are kind of bad for this world year. So I don't know which one you would go with here. I would go with
the
thinking with
Space
Space
Marines for
Marines.
sure because
Yeah.
that Space Marines list has 2 Gladiator Lancers, 2 Vindicators, and aggressor bombs and all that stuff. They have a lot of anti-tank,
Yep.
and yeah, that kind of sucks with World Eaters a little bit. But if the World Eaters player is able to pick the table and they pick a heavy table, then a lot of those gladiators and the Vindicators, even though they're smaller chassis, sure, will still have trouble getting into those firing lanes, especially if you pick the Thunderdome table. You know which one I'm talking about. So if you pick that Thunderdome table, I think World Eaters would be able to get off quite a few cheeky charges, and especially with the 8 bound, I think they would be able to eat a lot of the punch of the Space Marines before they actually got that punch off.
Sure. It's good thoughts. Um, Based on what I would have left, I would take off. I think I would take your Tau off the table right here.
Okay.
Bum bum bum. I'm generally okay with like a close game, whether it's a win or a loss into Tau, so it's fine. So now it's back half. If you're not familiar with it, anybody that's watching this, basically we're each going to put down a defender, and then we have 3 left. The 2 attackers, and then the one that we don't attack with is going to fall through. So kind of how you look at these is you're like, okay, which one of these things is good into each one, and which one do you predict is going to be the fall through, and which one can be the defender. So when I look at me pairing against him, I think their Tau will just play okay into their CSM. It's not that big of a deal. They'll play okay into the Astra Militarum. The Grey Knights is not really ideal for them. That Tellus doesn't really want to deal with that Grey Knights. And then their Blood Angels. If Tau is defending and they're picking a table, they're probably okay into the Blood Angels. It'll be a close game, win or loss either way, but I don't expect them to get run over. So Tau is kind of just like, okay, they have one match they don't really want. The Demons with big demons, they're fine into the Blood Angels. That's actually a pretty good match for them. They're fine into the Grey Knights. They're fine into the Guard. And they're generally fine into the CSM as well. The CSM can kill them probably better than the other 3 things. And they don't have as much shooting to really worry about. So it doesn't really want the CSM, but fine with the other 3. And then their CSM list, which is Renegade Raiders, they're generally just going to be fine into kind of all of these. And then the Death Guard, 50 Plague Marines and 5 Rhinos. Grey Knights wants to kind of hunt that, like really bad. The Guard doesn't really want that. The CSM, it'll just be a game. And then the Blood Angels don't
That
really
would be
want that.
they don't want that at all. That is a pairing. That is a pairing I am avoiding at all costs because all that fights first, all that -1 weapon skill, ballistic skill. That is just bad juju for.
And you got to
Blood
break the
Angel.
transports, right? Like you got to get through the
Right.
transports too. So it's not an easy task. So I think what I would do. So if I defend with that, I know this isn't coming into it, and then probably Grey Knights and something else comes into it. He wants to avoid this match, so he probably defends with the Blood Angels. And if I think he's going to defend with the Blood Angels, then I keep off both of these because I want to kind of put one of those into the Blood Angels. And then if the Blood Angels fall through, they fall through to just like an okay match, which is fine. So what I'm going to do is I would really like a table pick from my Tau. So I'm gonna defend Tau. Who you got? Who you want to defend on your side?
I would defend with the Astra Militarum.
Makes sense to me. Cool. So now that means that this could fall through, and I can put him in a very awkward situation where he can't allow this to fall through because I have both of these in there. So he's got to attack with the Blood Angels, which means then I can not pick the Blood Angels and I could force a fall through here as well. That's if he takes the risk there and he ends up into this, it could just be really bad for him. So I would take the risk that you are not going to fall through because I don't think that would happen. And obviously, you know what I'm doing, so you can just do it right now if you wanted to. So
Right.
who would you generally attack into the Tau?
No, it would definitely be the Blood Angels and the Chaos Space Marines both.
Cool. And then the Grey Knights fall through to CSM. I think that that's just like a fine game. I'm kind of I'm happy with this pairing with the CSM. That's not going to be a blowout. That's going to just be like a good game. So like that's just like a solid pairing right there. And then because I want Blood Angels into one of these matches, the Tau will take the CSM off, which will force this to whatever one he doesn't pick. And who do you want to?
So the Astra Militarum, I'm 100% picking into demons.
Okay.
And the strict reason for that is because they just changed with the new data slate how guard work with their born soldiers. So I think with our tank list going into demons, which have the monster mash, getting those lethals on each one of those big monsters is humongous. His small stuff can get the lethals on the flamers and the demonettes and everything else that was in that list. But as far as taking out the keeper, taking out Scarbrand, taking out the GUO, taking out Bellacore, those tanks are going to be where it's at. And I think that would be the best matchup for them. I would expect Astra Militarum to win that round for sure.
So give me your predictions on how you think each one of these games go on your side, and then I'll do a quick what I think it goes on the other side.
Well, of course, I would love to think that my team would just sweep it all 8-0, trying to pump up my boys. But there are a couple of matchups where I do think that it's going to be a little bit harder. So going from right to left, I think the Grey Knights pull out the win against the Chaos Space Marines just because Grey Knights are in such a good spot right now with all of their mobility and their toughness. I mean, everything across the board having 2-up armor saves. That's just fantastic against CSM. The Space Marines and the Death Guard.
What do you think? Is it like 12 points? How many points do you think it is?
Oh, on the Grey Knights, I would say probably like a 13-7, 12-8, somewhere in there. And then as far as the CSM versus, or not CSM, but Space Marines versus the Death Guard, I really think that the Death Guard would be able to choke out the Space Marines list, but it would be a close game. It would be like an 11-9, if that.
Okay. So you think a 9 there?
Astra Militarum and Demons, I think that it would be another close match just because the Demons have that demon save. And if that person's particularly hot on their invulnerable saves, there's really not much Astra Militarum can do.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it really comes down to Astra Militarum. Do you have the volume of shots? And the other important thing is, too, did you get the table that you were looking for? Demons, at this point, at this late stage in the pairings, if they have a favorable table because all the rest of the tables got taken up, then Astra Militarum could probably pull out a draw on this, if not a minor victory.
So you're thinking this is like a 10-10 or 11-9?
Probably.
Okay. I'm just gonna go on the safe side and put a 10. CSM and Tau.
All right. I think the CSM is going to have issues into the Tau. Tau just have such a withering amount of fire. And CSM, they have some tools and tricks to try to close that gap. But with it being retaliation cadre and a lot of the stuff being able to shoot into combat regardless, and a lot of things being able to punch up, I think the Tau will probably take that one as a 12-8 or 13-7
Okay.
ish.
I would agree with the 12-8. That's kind of where my head was on that one.
Yeah. Now with my Tau versus that Astra Militarum list, it really depends. I mean, I really think this honestly truly depends on two factors. One, what table did we both get? If it's a heavy table or a medium table, then we're both kind of in that same position, except for in this instance, I have more mobility and
Mm-hmm.
I have a little bit better of a chance at trading up and being able to deny cover with marker lights in the observing and guiding. That's really going to hurt the Astra Militarum a lot. But if we get a lighter table and there's not so many places to hide, the Astra Militarum is probably going to have a field day and probably keep it close. So on that one, I would expect either a 10-10 or an 11-9 on favor of me.
Okay. Yeah, I was gonna say it could probably swing up into your favor like a 12. So I'm gonna put like an 8 over here because I think it could potentially go a little worse. And
Yeah,
I think the Astro Militarum trying to play for the 10, but I think they have a downswing of like an 8. So like it could just be a little
right.
bit worse for them.
And I think a lot of the data slate kind of hurts them into that matchup because they don't have that easy access to reinforcements over and over and over again because Tau don't really do well into that battle of attrition. Where the Astra Militarum definitely shine in that. So with them only being able to use reinforcements one time per game now, they don't have that easy ability to just recycle these easy units like Scions or Kazarkin or
Yeah.
things like that, kind of help keep that primary score tight.
So you think that World Eaters has table pick here. You think that they are going to just do really well into the Marines because they could make their shooting less relevant?
Pretty much obsolete at that point. I mean, with World Eaters being able to charge all of their stuff through the walls, no
Mm-hmm.
line of sight, I think that one would be a 15-5 for
Okay.
World Eaters. I mean, if I'm being honest.
And then Death Guard into Grey Knights.
Death Guard and the Grey Knights. I think the Grey Knights pull that one out. I think they definitely get a 13-7 on the Death Guard. I think the only thing that's going to hinder them scoring any higher with Death Guard is just the sheer amount of bodies that the Death Guard have on the table. I
Sure.
think the hardest thing for the Grey Knights to remove off the table are going to be the Carnivores. But I think the Carnivores are going to be the first thing that they're going to go after, and then just start popping rhinos, embodying the Death Guard off of the objectives slowly over time.
And then Necrons into Knights. You feel pretty good about that one
I
too.
think, I feel really good about that one just because Knights have such a difficult time into Catan. It's hard to understate that. Um, Catan almost seemed purpose built for trading up into those larger units. So I think the Necrons pull out a 12-8 or a 13-7 on that.
Okay. So that puts this at right. So with what you have here, kind of on the safer side, that puts you right at 85, which is right in that draw territory. 86 is the win. So you're hanging on the edge. You're hanging on the edge. I think the only change is that like I think this demon match, like if it was me, I'm actually pretty confident in this demon match that this demon pulls out like a 13-7. I think that this can be way worse for the Astra Militarum than maybe you're giving it credit for. I get the lethals and everything, but the demons are going to always get the first hit. So the demons are going to basically be like, hey, I'm going to go up and I'm going to come down at the time that it chooses, or you're going to come with an 18 to shoot me. You're going to kill a demon, and then I'm going to kill 3 of your tanks. So I think that that's just where that match gets kind of awkward. The Death Guard into the Blood Angels. I think Blood Angels do have the ability to keep things relatively close. If the transports are played correctly in this, though, it will be a absolute terrible match for the Blood Angels. I think there's a potential that this could go very bad for the Blood Angels. If I had to
Mm-hmm.
say like my prediction here, I would probably just go 1 point higher on my side, and I would say it's a 12. Um, And I think that that's like the safe thing. And I think it could go to the 11-9. It could go to a 13-7. Um, the CSM into the Grey Knights, I think that's a fair statement. I'll just agree with you there. I don't. It's a game. It can go either way. I think it's I value Grey Knights very, very heavily right now.
Right.
The Grey Knights into the Death Guard here, I think it's a 15-5. And I think that's being pretty reasonably safe. Grey Knights just do not care about Death Guard in my experience at all, whether they have carnivores or they have tanks or they have infantry. So like that could just be a larger loss. And then I think you're right here. This really comes down to if this person has looked at the closed tables. So I play like shooting armies, and I actually broke down like table 7 and table 8 for like this exact reason. And if you actually look at it, and if anyone like shooting armies actually can play very well on 7 and 8. You just have to understand how you have to play it. I would assume that this person has not done a breakdown of that because they're not expecting to play on that table. So I'll agree with you, and I'll say that they lose 15-5. Probably could have kept them off. That's probably a pairing mistake on my part, putting that into the World Eaters, but it's okay. And then the Knights, yeah, I mean, I don't. I think this can just be better for you. I would give the Knights like a 5 here. Like I have zero respect for Knights, and I think everything just 20-0s them. I understand like how good Knights can be, but man, I just have no respect for them. And like the Necron list can equally just have no respect for them, and they can just full send into them, and they could just table them in 2 turns, dude. They could just run at them.
Oh
And
yeah,
it's like, what
for
are you
sure.
gonna kill? You're gonna kill a Satan? Okay, good for you. You're dead. So it's like it can
Right.
just go. So it's like the Night players playing on their back foot. They're trying to score points before the inevitability of them being tabled comes. And I think 5 is being generous. But that was the goal of me putting the Knights out, is I thought they would get 20-0'd. So I think 5 is a generous number there. I would expect up to a 0 on my Knights on this side. So even if we go worst case scenario and we just say a 0, if the predictions were here, that Space Marine game is going to hurt me because that was like I wasn't thinking about the table pick for whatever reason. So they are sitting at a 62, right? So you're a little bit safer than like so like I'm saying like you're winning the round based on my predictions. I paired like a potato into you. You paired very good. You have a higher upswing than I think you're giving some credit for. Unless I can't add. Yeah, like these 2 games, like this game here and this game here is what will win you the round.
Right.
And if you can get the appropriate upticks there, then you have a really good round at hand. And then, right, your Blood Angels player, it's very important that you're like, hey, Blood Angels player, don't get 20-0'd.
Just keep it close. Yeah, just keep it close.
Right. So it's always important telling people like what to expect. And it's like, hey, Necrons, we need you to raffle stomp the Knights. Like, just you need to do it. And then even this game here, like you need to tell. So like this game, you need to say, do not get 20-0'd. This game, you need to say, do not get 20-0'd. If those games flop on you, then you'll definitely be in like the draw territory, because that'll make up for the big losses here. But yeah, I mean, overall, good pairings, good plan. I like it. I think you could have just avoided this. I think you could probably when you took the demons here, I think you should just take this, because you say that it's the one that you really want to avoid. So just take it off the table. Like the guard will play just fine into it. Like they'll still just do good into it. It's not going to be that much of a difference outcome than they would have to the demons. But then your Blood Angels will have a better chance of keeping it close here versus like the potential it goes really bad. Because the Blood Angels just go into a demon and they're like, that demon's dead. Like, yes, the demons can, like, they're harder to kill sometimes, but like I've seen demon players favor this match. I've seen Blood Angels players match. I favor this in Blood Angels. I would like be like, my Blood Angels players getting 15 out of this.
Yeah, and I would expect honestly the Blood Angels to go into the demons, especially because of the Keeper of Secrets and the Lord of Change and Scarbrand. they all tried to delete a unit a turn. Any failed save is just a dead Marine right there outright.
Mm-hmm.
So unless Blood Angels get that first turn charge and they kill what they're intending to kill, any clapbacks are going to be bad for them, which is why I figured the Militarum would be better into the demons because they can keep them at bay. And at best, all of those greater demons are hitting around strength 8, strength 9, and AP 1, 2, sometimes 3 when you're talking about the Keeper of Secrets, for example. But it's all damage 2, damage 3. And I think Astra Militarum has an easier time trading up into that because they have the T12 bodies, they have the 2-up armor saves, they have the 10-inch moves, and especially with the demo cannons being D6 plus 1, strength 14, D6 damage into each one of those demons. Any failed save against a demon is just going to be critical damage.
Yeah, for sure. Well, it's good thoughts. That's just, I think that's my only like thing is like I would have switched those personally. Um, and then I don't know if I would have taken my Necrons off the table into the Knights. I would have put probably something else into the Knights. Like you also could like avoid this Blood Angels stuff if you just put your Blood Angels into the Knights. Like you can still just get
Yeah,
a 20 out of that. It's just generally fine. The Knights don't have
right.
enough to kill. Like it's like Blood Angels list. When you look at them on paper, you're like, oh, cool, it's a bunch of Marines, and then you see it on the table, and you're like, oh, it's a bunch of Marines.
Bunch of
And
Marines. Yeah.
and each one of those just goes that knight's dead, that's night. So it's like a similar thing. So I would have loved to just see this into there and these guys be more free reign for you to pick on somebody else. I think that the Necrons have a very good picking order in this pairing specifically. So just try a couple other practicings with your team, see what happens, like if different things go out and everything. But yeah, this is the process that we go through when doing practice pairings and everything, and we just kind of do this over and over and over again. So hopefully anybody watching learns some insight from naming and everything, and kind of how we think about pairings. And like, comment, subscribe, and do all those fun things, and we'll see you on the next one.
See you guys.